Cache-Maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to GeoGearHeads. I'm the bad cop with Daryl W4 on this, the 35th beta episode of GeoGearHeads. Why use GSAK?
And we'll find out in just a few moments, but next week we're going to be talking about dataless caching. We'd love to hear your comments about this show or anything that you might want to know about caching without a data service. You can call those into our voicemail line, which is 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com or through social media, and you'll find our links at cacheamaniacs.com.
So, Daryl, next week we're pretty much going to talk about my life without data.
Yep, your at least your caching life. We
my
won't
caching
get,
life, okay.
Much more personal than that.
Well, on this episode, we are pleased to have with us Adrian Faulkner. He wrote the GPS track log article, 5 Reasons Every Geocacher Could Benefit from GSAK. Now, before we get going too deep, let's talk a little about what GSAK is and what it can do for us.
Yeah, now GSAK is a great tool for any geocacher, really, that will take those pocket queries. It's also got the live connection to the API now. Mm-hmm. But we have what we'll refer to as an expert, at least, Adrian Faulkner. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So how would you describe GSAK?
What I would describe GSAK as is a big database, basically. When you think about geocaching, what are we trying to do? We're amassing some sort of statistic, whether that be trying to fill out a terrain difficulty grid, or trying to do so many caches per day, or any matter of stats. So we need something to kind of keep all that data together. And so what GSAK really is a great big repository of all that data, and it allows you to kind of manipulate it a bit like you would an Excel spreadsheet to give you the data out that you need in order to get the stats that you want, or to achieve the goals that you have within your geocaching.
Yeah, and I know a lot of our listeners are big fans of GSAK, and we have a number of them who have written in. But that is one of the big reasons that a lot of people are using GSAK. Most people got into GSAK to load their GPS. Now they're using it to do things like figure out, whether they've solved a puzzle correctly, or if they've met all of the goals of a challenge cache.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I spend a lot of time with GSAK. Basically, I look at all my local puzzle caches, and as I work through them, I tend to I never tend to solve them all because I'm a bit thick, but I make some progress with them, and I can store that data instead of bits of post-it notes or a notepad file that I can never find. I put those all into GSAK, so it's all in one place.
That really is a good use, and I have to admit, I'm right there with you. I'll go through, 4 out of the 5 steps to solve a puzzle cache and never quite get to that 5th one. Either I can't get it, but I can always pick it up in GSAK right where I left off.
Yeah, I only tend to get to like the first stage and get stuck about there.
Well, why don't we get into some of the reasons that our listeners have told us that they like using GSAK, and D. Vixen wrote in via Google Plus that they recently did a power trail here in the ACT. I have a bad case of just one more on the best of days, and the urge that would have a great, and the urge would have been great after such a long day. To get around this, I wiped all waypoints off the 60 CSX, then loaded each of the 53 we were going for one at a time off the website. At number 44, my husband asked me why I didn't use GSAK to slice out the 53.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point there, because one of the things that you can search for if you take your normal Pocket query, what you would do is you'd pick a central place and then, give me every traditional within 5 miles. Well, if you've got a big circuit or a big series power trail or something like that, there may be other caches in the way that you kind of don't want to pick up. So what you can do is you can, with GSAK, you could literally within the name search for a certain string. So if it's the series has a certain name, you can just put part of the string of that name in there to just get that power trail, so that you can then just with one click of the button just basically import it into your GPS.
Yeah, and I use the routes feature on geocaching.com a lot to help me filter out the caches I want to do on a trip, but it doesn't give you a lot of the fine detail that I'd like for filtering out the caches, and I end up with a bunch of caches that I have to either on the fly or ahead of time go and figure out if there are ones that I could do. So GSAK is nice for that, even though I don't really use it. I tend to do more the bookmark route, which takes a long time, but it is a nice feature to have the bookmarks. It's just nowhere near as quick as going through something like GSAK.
Yeah, I think for myself as a cacher, what I want with GSAK is I want a tool so that if I, for example, one of the things I do is I maintain a database of all my local caches. Basically, I run PQs within certain amount of miles and limit them by the date that they were placed, so that I can literally over a series of maybe 4 or 5 PQs get everything within, say, 5 miles that I haven't found. And that's really handy for me, because when a fellow cacher phones me up and says, let's go out caching tonight, I don't want to have to say, well, you know what, I've got to run a PQ, I've got to wait for the email to come through, and you can guarantee that it'll be the one time that geocaching.com is running really, really slow, and the PQ isn't there, and when you click through, it isn't sitting there in your queue waiting to download and things like that. So by maintaining that active list of local caches, if somebody says, oh, let's go out and do some caching, I can just literally load up GSAK, plug my GPS into the USB, and away we go. So it's really handy like that.
One of the things I really like about GSAK is you can build up logs. For instance, when you download a PQ, you get 5 logs. But if you download that PQ on a regular basis, you can stack those logs, and so when you're out in the field and you're looking for this thing and you've spent half an hour, you can look through, 20, 30 different logs and say, you know what? It says here, it should be over there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how many times have you gone out and somebody said, you're looking through the previous logs and you see a note there that goes, well, we couldn't find this, but we used this person's coordinates that they put in the logs a month back, and we found it straight away, and you're there going, well, wait a minute, I haven't got logs that go back that far. So, like you say, GSAK is really, really handy for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had the Winter Trio email us a couple of times, actually, one with a lot of detail, and they were nice enough to abbreviate that. So, Bad Cop, do you want to go and read the abbreviated email from Winter Trio?
Sure. So, point number 1, I don't like having the 1,000 cache limit on my 60 CSX. So I load the entire state as POIs. That way I can use the Garmin POI loader to load the GC.com GPXs directly. It's not nearly as easy. So do you want to cover that one first?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, for me, using the POIs, because I like having all the additional paperless data as well. I mean, I had a Etrex, was it a Venture HCX, I think it was. And you couldn't have paperless caching with that, and there were ways that you could kind of fudge it, where you would you could get GSAK to change the title. So for me personally, being able to have that actual all that data is important to me. And what I would personally do is, if I know I'd maintain the database of the state, or a part of a state, and then would download the area I was going to, and download 1,000 caches there. And you can be a bit smart sometimes, because when you're going out caching, it's unlikely you're going to do loads of puzzle caches because some of them you can do in the location, but a lot of them require a lot of prep work. And you might not be the type of person who does a lot of multis. You're maybe not going to do a lot of 5.5s. And what you can do is through GSAK is by using the filters, you can say, well, don't give me anything more than a terrain 4. Don't give me anything that's more difficult than 5. Don't give me anything that is currently disabled. Don't give me So you can filter an area down into a subset that's really going to target what you're likely to hit when you go into that area. But having said that, everybody caches in their own way, and one of the beauties of GSAK is that there is that flexibility, so that if you do want to kind of load up more caches using them as points of interest, you can do that. So.
Well, I think the really important part of that that they hit on in that email is it does support a wide range of GPSRs and allows you to do things that the plugins on the websites don't necessarily do, and even some of the manufacturers' own software won't really let you do easily. So if you have one of these less common units, you can still load that. And, the Nuvi users, for example, really love using it because it does load as POIs with a little bit of information that you can't have if you're loading it as a waypoint.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as I say, it comes back to this whole thing that it's kind of a central repository for all your data, and then from there you can kind of cut the data whichever way you want, and kind of, as you say, load it onto a wide range of devices.
So getting back to Winter Trio's question, point number 2 says, that way I don't have to plan my outings unless I leave the state. All the caches are already loaded.
Okay.
Using the POI system. Number 3, it's tough to plan outings for challenges by PQ, like the Jasmer and the area-based challenges. Bookmarks can be done, but searching in GSAK is much easier. So
yeah, I don't know what specifically the challenges that they're doing there, but one of the other things that GSAK has is it has the ability to load macros in, and I've definitely seen it here in the UK where a new challenge cache has been published. We had one with that's just recently been published that uses one of the kind of ordnance survey maps that we have in the UK, like the official maps, and all their grid references. You have to find one in each grid location, and as part of that, they've actually produced a GSAK macro that you can download and you basically run against your finds database or your local area to find, which caches you need to do, which caches you've done that qualify. So, if you are doing challenge caches, that can often be really helpful because there's. I was looking tonight just to see what how many macros there were now, and it's growing exponentially. So there's that again. It's that flexibility.
Yeah, and there are macros that will format the either GPX file or the points of interest for a specific unit. Say you have an odd model Lorentz or something like that, and those macros really add a lot of power. In fact, Andy XPunkX made a macro to help with puzzle caches, and that was really nice.
When I had my HCX years ago, as I say, this was in the days pre-paperless caching, and one of the things that we used to use, there was a macro that we used that kind of concatenated the title and kind of put the difficulty and the terrain rating and maybe the clue in the title, in the actual title. So even though you couldn't paperless cache with those, it kind of manipulated the data so that it kind of helped you when you went out at caching.
Yeah, I used that one myself on my legend, and it would take out words like then, and, or, of, and give you just the basic nouns you were looking for, and then a difficulty, terrain, and size. And you can see that just right in the title and go, no, I don't want to look for that one. Let's go find another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I really do like the macros that they have in GSAK. Like like you mentioned, that one for Evernote that XPunkX created, we have a Delorme challenge that we have to maintain here, and it's so much easier to use that, the macro for the Delorme challenges than anything else we found. And you have all of those different macros, so it really is a time saver for doing those challenges.
I think that's the important thing, though, with GSAK is that, I think when I first used it, when somebody first introduced me to it, I downloaded it because you can download it for free, and it just puts up like a little nag screen, but it's fully featured. And I was like, okay, so what do I do with it? And I think that's the big thing that puts a lot of people off GSAK is that they download it and they say, right, okay, it doesn't seem to be doing anything for me. And I think that what you have to kind of look at it is a bit like an Excel spreadsheet. You're using it to manipulate the data and kind of twist it and filter it to suit your particular needs. It's not a case of, well, what can it do for me? It's more a case of, well, what do you want it to do? Because it has that so much flexibility.
Well, and one of the real questions that brought this up is with things like smartphones now, with the better paperless caching that most of the newer GPSRs include, what is the real value of GSAK to the common geocacher? And I really don't use it very much, so I really can't say what that really is. But there are still a number of values that I see. Even though I'm not really a user, I still have the license, I still use it occasionally for these kind of high-powered features, even if I'm not using it day to day. But Adrian, you're actually using it day to day, and you were talking pre-show about using it for field notes.
Yeah, I mean the way that I used to, when we used to go out caching, we used to go out and do a nice big day, and we'd get a load of caches done, because I'm a bit of a numbers cacher myself, but I do like interesting walks, but I do like my numbers as well. And what initially happened was, you'd get back and you've done 80 in a day or 100 in a day, and you would sit there and you would write the logs, and most of it was pretty much kind of the same information or the same format of information. And I remember I did a series of, I think it was 100 caches, and it took me 2 days to log it, literally solid. And one of the things that GSAK did was that they introduced initially a macro that you could run that would kind of read in your the notes that you put into your GPS and create a field note using, I suppose the easiest thing to describe it is a bit like a Microsoft Word mail merge template. So you kind of, you tell it, right, okay, put in the information here of what number cache of the day this was. Put this, what my find count is here. So you could kind of create this template and then personalize it with, I tend to put notes into my GPS. I tend to put like FB for found by, or who found it, and I'll put little notes to myself so that when I go through and type up my notes, that I can just put one line in that will personalize that note. And then what you could do was you would then submit it, and it would submit it to geocaching.com's field notes. And then you could go through and post it. And this saved me immense amounts of time. But the thing that GSAK has done now, and I think it also refers back to your question of, does it still have relevance today, is that they've introduced this new feature that uses the geocaching-live.api, which has kind of taken that macro, built it into the system, and has it now so that once I've typed up these notes, and I can do 100 caches in about 20 to 40 minutes, and individual logs, and I can also have it so that when I click submit, it will automatically submit those and publish those logs, as well as dipping any travel bugs that I've got, dropping any off, picking any up. It's absolutely fantastic, and I think that's one of the key things about GSAK is that it continues to innovate. And I don't think if it hadn't existed, I don't think that, for example, I don't think that the stats would have appeared. You wouldn't have had the stats that you have on geocaching.com now. In the old days, well, I say the old days, it's a couple of years ago, really, but it feels like the old days. But you never used to have those stats, and it was only because people were using GSAK to produce these really elaborate stats that kind of helped drive geocaching.com to introduce new features. And so I think that smartphones, there's what will happen is you will see some of the older features of GSAK get sort of swallowed up by the smartphones, and I think that's a really good thing. But what will happen is that people are always going to want individual and unique ways to manipulate that data. Classic example is somebody said to me who absolutely hates GSAK. Oh, GSAK, everybody goes on about GSAK. Oh, it's too much hassle. I don't know how to use it. It's too complicated. And I said, I've got this problem where somewhere along the line, I do not know where, I have logged a cache twice. I do not know how to find it. And that is really simple to do in GSAK. You just load in your found caches, and you just do a filter for everything where the find count is greater than 1. And it's literally a drop-down box. And this person had spent weeks going through their logs trying to find this. Yeah. And I was like, you can do it in 10 minutes, and that includes the time it takes to download your finds. So, so I think that the thing is with GSAK is that it continues to innovate. There's there's enough people using it who want to do unusual things, just as people want to release unusual caches and push things forward. And so I think it's a real driving force. It's always kind of one step ahead of everything else. So probably in 6 months, a year's time, the geocaching live features may be on an iPhone app. But by that time, there will be new features in GSAK that will kind of, be moving things forward and making things useful and, helping caches, with the administration side. Because let's face it, we don't really want to spend time doing the administration. We just want to be out there finding Tupperware.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, that multiple finds on the same cache is a big feature that I miss out of it's not about the numbers, and I really wish that geocaching.com would install. But there are, you mentioned the Live API, there are a number of apps on Android and on iOS now that do support that, but they're not doing quite the level that GSAK does with that Live API. For the most part, they're just processing caches in and out. They're not giving you the templating. They're not giving you nearly as much of the capabilities that GSAK does with that Live API.
No, but because there are so many apps out there on the market, they're continuing to innovate and introduce new features. Geocaching.com, there's rarely a month that goes by where they're not fiddling with something. Some people may say that be for the better, or some people may say that's for the worse. But there is this constant technological upgrade that is going on within caching, and I think that I remember when the first mobile phone apps came out, that people were like, "Wow, this is the future." Finally I can have it on my phone. I don't have to take my GPS with me everywhere. And you look at the first early apps; they were frankly terrible compared to what there is now. And I'm sure in a year's 2 years time, the features that those apps will have will make what we have now seem a little bit rubbish. So.
Yeah, definitely. But one of the interesting things on the kind of smartphone front is that with Windows 8, we're going to see some new tablets coming out. And Nighthawk 700 actually commented on this in Google Plus that he's seen several manufacturers recently announce new Windows 7 tablets. Dell, and he thought Samsung, which yes, Samsung did. Microsoft is actually coming out with their Surface tablets. And we've also seen some talk from Sony about their tablets coming out. So there are going to be a number of these tablets running Windows 8, and hopefully they're going to be able to run GSAK, and a number of them have GPSRs built into them. Some of them will have data services, some won't, but I'm thinking that might be a good option, and Nighthawk 700 does as well, if not for actually finding the caches, because that would be a pain, for doing the power caching type runs to have whomever logging in the car. That's going to be so much better than trying to do it on an iPhone or on a Galaxy Nexus or Galaxy S3 or Note even.
Yeah,
or
I
even a
think.
laptop. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, a friend of mine, had in his 4x4, he used to have a little notebook mount where he'd have GSAK running and memory map running and everything like that. So, there's definitely benefits to a lot of what Microsoft's going to do with 8. It's just a case of developers and macro writers kind of hooking into that. And seeing what they can innovate with it. So I think it's definitely a good thing. I just don't think that I would probably the price of those PCs or those laptops. I don't think I would really kind of see myself ever kind of undocking it from the keypad and kind of going, oh, I'm just gonna wander into these woods here with trying to find this cache. So.
Sure, but yeah, it could be another way that GSAK becomes more relevant in the future is when you can take it like you would an iPad or a Galaxy tablet or something like that for your power caching runs, for your planning in the hotel room, because it is going to be a lot less bulky than carrying a full notebook.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that's very true.
I've been on several power caching runs with other people, and there's one group in particular. The passenger seat is like the cockpit of the space shuttle. He's got one laptop, a couple of GPSs, a Nuvi and like a 60 CSX, all this mounted around him. It takes him 15 minutes to extract himself from it. But he's got everything he needs right there. You say, okay, what's the closest cache? You can plot this out, and if you need to, say, hey, I didn't get that cache, can you download it for me?
Yeah.
And, we've got it right there. I laugh, but you know what, he's the one I go looking for when I need some information.
Yeah, I mean, it's these people who've got all the all the setups that you kind of turn around to and kind of go, oh, you caching this weekend, because that they've got everything sorted out.
Exactly.
Indeed. Now, we mentioned that GSAK can have kind of a steep learning curve. Is there something that you would recommend a new user really start doing with GSAK that might help them kind of gain some familiarity and some experience with GSAK?
I think the first thing I would suggest is start building up a little database of your local area. I think what you can do is when you go onto geocaching.com and you create PQs, you can, if you said, well, give me everything within 5 miles, you may get 2,000 caches, which is too many. But what you can do is within that, it can say where the date placed is. So what you can do is you can play around with that so that you can say, well, give me everything within 10 miles, say, that was placed between, well, you can go from the first of the first 2,000 because there wasn't any geocaches back then, to 1st of May 2004. And if you look at that and that gives you 750, you go, okay, let's try 1st of May 2005. And if that goes over your limit, okay, well, you kind of scale the date back. And it takes a little bit of playing around, but once you kind of get your head around that, you can set up a series of PQs that that run daily or over a course of a week that will literally give you a database of all your local caches, which is fantastic. So now you've got that data, all that data into GSAK, you can kind of start to play around with the filters, and really you kind of just need to get your feet wet a little bit. Decide what it is that you're trying to do. What type of cacher are you? Are you a numbers cacher? Are you a puzzle cacher? Are you trying to do certain challenges? And kind of understand first of all what it is that you kind of your aim within geocaching is, and then use GSAK to kind of help assist that. So if you're a puzzle cacher, we'll start storing the notes or of your progress into the user field of the caches that you're solving. If you are a numbers cacher. Well, maybe you want to see what all the kind of easiest caches locally are, so that you could, maybe put those onto a GPS for a day out of, easy drive-bys or something like that. Um, so if you kind of get that information together, you kind of then can play around with it, because if you've just got an empty database, you kind of can't see the benefits. So I would kind of suggest that as kind of as a starting point. And then what will happen is as most of us, we will bump into caches either in the field or at events, and you'll probably ask somebody again, "Oh, I wish I could do this," and somebody will turn around and go, "Oh, there's a macro for that," or "There's you can do it in GSAK this way," and it's not going to be quite so daunting, because you're going to not you're going to hear this terminology and go, "Oh yeah, wait a minute, I know what the filter is, because I've played around with that before. Oh, I remember that option. I've seen it somewhere." So I think it's basically getting your feet wet. The other thing you can do is download your found caches. What I would always recommend, when I started, I always kept my found caches in a separate database to my, if you like, local database. And to be quite honest, I've found over time it's better to just have one database with everything in it, because you can always filter out based on when it was, the date stamp of the GPX file that you loaded in. So you can always filter out ones that you haven't updated in ages. But you can then use that to kind of start playing around with the stats. There's a lot of really good stats macros, and you can get nice things where you can get your state, and it will color in each county that you found caches in, and you've probably seen those the stats on other people's profile pages. So that's another little thing that you can kind of play around with and just sort of get yourself familiar with the application.
Also, there's typically once or twice a year a GSAK 101 course taught in your local, it's either your local geocaching association or just in your local area. You'll find somebody teaching a geocaching, or I'm sorry, a GSAK 101 course. That's always a good place to start as well. Yeah,
we don't get so many of those over in the UK, funnily enough. I mean, we tend to have our meets tend to be in sort of pubs, so it tends to be more about beer. But but having said that,
I need to come over there.
Yeah, it's great. But having said that, if you go to events and you start talking about GSAK, there's usually someone around who's kind of using it, and I can guarantee you that no matter how much you use it, you will one day go around and you go, well, I like GSAK and it does this and this and this, but it takes me ages to do a certain thing, and somebody else will go, you can do it this way. And that's the beauty of it, is that there's kind of all this disseminated knowledge out there, so you're constantly learning things that you didn't realize that the application could do. So you don't have to feel kind of worried that you're kind of going to be the dummy of the group, because everybody's kind of learning off each other.
And with any powerful tool, it is difficult to use until you understand it, and you'll never know all the aspects of it.
No, I think if you try and learn all the aspects of it, you're just going to give yourself a headache. As I say, I think the important thing is to try and understand what it is that you would like out of it. Why do you want to store this data? What data is important to you? And I'm not talking sort of in a kind of privacy sense. I'm talking more in my goal as a cacher is to get to find 200 caches by the end of the month. Okay, so therefore you need to know which are your nearest caches that are unfound and things like that. So it's kind of understanding that and then using the tool to support that aim.
Exactly.
Now, you're also a big fan of the new live functionality that was built into the newer version of GSAK, and I've talked with a number of people who really haven't been so hot on making that change because it is a paid upgrade to get there. What would you tell those people are like the key points that really make it worth making the change and paying that extra cash?
I would say, first of all, GSAK I think is I can't remember exactly how much it is, but it's not expensive application. And I think that for the price, it's really good value for money. So it's definitely worth picking it up anyway, whether that function or not. But the only thing I will say from my personal point of view, which is, as I say, somebody, I will go out 6 in the morning, I will cache until 8 o'clock at night, and I will have a brilliant day, and I will come home and I will be very tired and usually a bit sore. And the last thing I really want to do at the end of the day is spend ages writing up those notes. But at the same time, I don't want my logs to I want my logs to reflect the fantastic day that I've had. So there's this kind of conundrum where, I want to write decent logs, but I'm just don't want to spend ages doing all this administration. And the one thing I will say is that what would have taken me by hand writing each log probably 2 days, that when it went to a macro would take me a couple of hours, I have logged about 120 caches in under 40 minutes. And that is dipping a trackable in every single one. That's dropping off trackables. So, from my point of view, it's the pure speed. It's allowing me to spend more time, kind of doing the actual hobby part of it rather than doing the administration side of it. And I know a lot of people who, even if it's you've only done 20, people go, wow, this is really quick. You just fill out the template, you click a button, boom, 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 boom. They're all published. So that alone is definitely worth the money.
Without a doubt. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to consider you our resident GSAK expert.
You're going to have all your viewers go, why did he say that? It's so much easier to do it this way. So, like I said, you're just always going to learn new things. So.
Exactly. Now, I know this has been a stretch for you since it's, 2 a.m. there in...
It's coming up to 3 a.m. in the morning.
3 a.m.
I haven't fallen asleep yet. This is why I'm kind of looking a little bit starry-eyed.
Yeah. I really appreciate you staying up late and talking with us tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Or should I say tomorrow?
Yeah, I am. I'm like a day ahead. I am the future.
Tomorrow's looking good. We already have proof.
Yeah, exactly.
Check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We'd love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.